Hello and welcome to the first edition of Mount Rushmore Aftersun. The first ever edition of Mount Rushmore Aftersun, where we look back at some of the contentious selections from the Tipperary and Meath Mount Rushmore selections of last week, which were completed by Alan Quinlan and myself in Tipperary, and Meath's one was Hector and Tommy Rooney. Joining me to discuss some of these contentious selections will be Tipperary's Seamus Kennedy. We'll have Meath's Mickey Burke on the line, and for an impartial external view, we've also Cork's Jamie Wall to come in and chat about both. He was born a Meath man and is obviously Seamus's first or second cousin, so he will have a pretty good insight on both places. I'm going to just get, hopefully without any too many hiccups, going to get Tommy Rooney on about how we came to the selections which we did. I'm not sure. Hopefully Tommy's going to join me here now in a sec. Hello, Michael. Thomas. How are things?
How are you? Stellar intro.
I tried my best.
Well done, pal. Well done. I tell you what, I need a haircut. Jesus, look at you.
Yeah. To be honest, I've been rocking this now since about the first week in January, so it's been nothing new to me.
My sister's to work for you.
Yeah, my sister's gotten quite good at doing a fade under high supervision. So,
okay. Fair play. It's good. It's a good skill to have these days.
Yeah. I think you'd make a bit of money coming in the next few weeks.
You were saying we've got a good lineup coming up this next 45 minutes or so.
Yeah. Seamus Kennedy will be on the line to discuss the Tipperary view. We could be accused of a Southern Tipperary bias, so in order to even that out, we got another Clonmels man to join. Mickey Burke will be on the line, obviously, to talk about Meath's selection, and probably have a pop at you over the fact that Trevor Giles hasn't made it in.
The Honey Badger, yeah, he'll be joining us.
And then Jamie Wall will also be joining, probably to discuss both, and he'll also be hopefully giving us a bit of insight into the new CPA survey.
Well, we needed to get a mouthpiece on, so I think Jamie was always going to serve that function for us. He's been cribbing and crying on Twitter, so I think the two of us, when we were talking about this, we said Jamie's the man to get on and offer a bit of impartiality. But of course, a Meath man behind it all, so don't mind all that Cork guff.
This sort of a discussion which has no right answer is like a red rag to a bull to him anyway.
That's the thing, and I think of all the selectors that I've ended up kind of producing most of these segments over the last couple of weeks, and they've taken on a life of their own, thankfully, for Off the Ball, because as you know yourself, there's not much live sport at the minute, so we needed something to talk about. So I don't think we anticipated, though, people would care that much about these Mount Rushmore debates, because people really care. Like I felt it. I felt it over the last 24 hours.
There's been a lot of heat.
I feel like I've let a lot of people down.
Yeah, I think you can fall into the trap of trying to, you're trying to pick the county's Mount Rushmore. I think my Mount Rushmore would be quite different to the one I probably picked.
Really?
Yeah, I think so. I think you probably picked what you would pick yourself.
A little bit, yeah. No, I think, yeah, true. Probably to an extent. I get what you're saying, but a lot of people, Michael, would level it at you. You picked Declan Brown because he's your Mount Rushmore.
Yeah, fair enough.
So there you go.
But I think I gave myself a very specific criteria, and you can call it an absolute cop-out to leave out Shane Long because he's still playing. And I'm sure what's coming down the line from two people who are about to talk about Tipperary are going to level that at me, which is fair enough, but I needed some way to cut down the list, and that was the way I went with it. But yeah, I don't think you can argue with Declan either. People know the football side of it, but then on the hurling side of it, he's also won 2 Fitzgibbon Cups. He's won an All Ireland minor hurling. Do you know, it's a multi. He has a multi-sport behind the football, and then obviously from a personal point of view, I think he was always going to go in for me.
100%. And listen, there's a balance to it, and when I'm trying to pick the selectors, I'm trying to find a balance in who I'm choosing as well. And it's very true that GAA is our national sport. Regardless of what county you're in, it's either going to be leaning heavily towards football or hurling in most counties. There's going to be very few counties without a GAA representative on it. So I find it quite difficult to pick two selectors who aren't of a GA background or haven't got some link to GA. I'll give you one thing. I've Down coming up on Friday, and Conor Deegan, Down legend of the 90s, is joining us, and a massive golfing fan. And we're also getting on Donal O'Neill, who would be, in terms of working on off the ball, one of the smartest people I've come across, who is associated with the GA. He's one of the founding members of the GPA back in the day. He's living in South Africa at the minute. But when I rang Donal earlier on to talk to him about Downs, he ate the head of me. And he was giving out stink about my Meath selections. Too much GA, he said. And then when he heard about Tipperary's, and now, honestly, I've done a bit of Googling tonight, he went nuts that Terry Mchugh wasn't on it. And I'll be honest, I still barely know who Terry Mchugh is. And when you Google Terry Mchugh, most of the articles are Tipperary's forgotten Olympian. So, like, he was a javelin thrower, and apparently he was the most remarkable athlete. But that's been the kind of beauty of Mount Rushmore. There is no right, there is no wrong, and we're learning all these brilliant stories as well.
I think so, yeah. Like, to be honest now, that's a completely new name to me, and anyone that I've talked to about it, it's never come up, that name. So
100%. And I'll be honest with you, he actually said to me that he's a Meath man, but I did all the Googling while I was on the phone to him. I said, he's not, he's from Tipperary, he's born in Clonmel. He was born in Clonmel, so we'll get into that one a little later. We'll let Donal tell that story, because I think he knows Terry quite well. He'll tell us that story on Friday. So, yeah, so the next hour, I suppose, is myself and yourself have kind of been arguing over the name a little bit. Well, you're a massive Love Island fan, and I'm a big X Factor fan. So I've gone for the extra Rushmore, but you're going for Aftersun.
Yeah, well, I just think Aftersun kind of gives you the connotations of you still being under the heat. Like, and that's what this is. Your selections are still under the heat. I'm about to go on probably and try and back up why I've put in some people into mine against people who are so totally against it. And that's the heat that you're under. So that's why I went with Aftersun. Obviously, the Love Island connotations, great. And we no Love Island to look at this
Listen,
year,
Love Island fans, Mount Rushmore can serve that purpose for you this summer. I'm happy. I'm delighted to hear that you've really thought about this, because you are going to be under the cosh here. There's trouble coming. Like, it's completely random, but very Irish. It's not that random that Jamie Wall and Seamus Kennedy are both cousins. So, like, it's a small country, but I have a fair idea the two boys have been chatting amongst themselves.
Yeah.
And they're going to hammer you over the next little while. And then, look, Mickey Burke, he can say what he wants about me. We played Longwood in the championship a couple of years ago. And to be fair, the two of us stayed a long way away from each other. But Longwood bet us. They went on and won it that year. But Mickey will have his cut. He can say whatever he wants. But he made the biggest mistake of all this week. He thought I chose Barry Garrity over Graham Garrity. So he ended up backing me up live on air.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought you copped out, to be honest. The Shane Horgan selection was a cop-out. You knew full well you had to put a racing man in, and you knew that Hector would change it. So you wanted to keep your other three. I think you're...
No, I don't know. I don't think Hector would have changed the footballer. He might have changed the footballer, but I don't think he would have changed a footballer. Like, the thing is, Tipperary can be whatever they want. But in my opinion, Meath is football country. And it's a bit of racing too.
Okay. Yeah.
Honestly. And I loved Shane Horgan growing up. I loved him. Like, that try in Croke Park, catching that ball against the English. That was one of the... Like, I was 14 that year. That was one of the biggest moments of my life. Like, him doing that to the English in Croke Park. Like, what a catch. A GA, man. I love the GA analogies with rugby. I love it so much. And that was a massive thing for me growing up. But I'll be honest, I actually listened back a bit because I was a bit rattled on air when Hector was going at me. It's tough when you have a professional comedian and a broadcaster like Hector putting you under pressure. It's tough. You were the man putting the pressure on Alan Quinlan the last day. And Alan, you forced Alan into a couple of changes.
Yeah, with some help from Dahi Boland now, to be honest.
And Dahi did well, yeah.
Yeah, the only one of my selection that I didn't get in was Owen Kelly, and I'm sure I'm about to be battered about that as well coming up.
There's a great comment there from Tina Foley, who works as an off the bench. Terry Mchugh, not only our best javelin thrower ever, but also a dual Olympian, summer and winter, now living and leading. I can't see the rest of that. Can you see the rest of it?
No, Shay.
Maybe she meant Shinny.
Yeah.
I'd say she did. Yeah. So, listen, I think we're going to try and get Jamie Wall up now.
Yeah.
So, now... He's living in Lettuce in Switzerland, so we'll try. I'm going to message Jamie here and make sure he's ready to go.
Barring any technical difficulties, we'll get him in.
We'll be good to go. So you're going to chat away with Jamie for the next little while. Jamie's the outsider. He's the Cork man who's been cribbing and crying on Twitter all week. And after that, you'll be checking in with Seamus Kennedy. Yep. A man you played it yourself, playing football for Tipp.
Yeah.
He obviously defected to the hurling.
I don't think it was ever a question of him going playing hurling. It was always what he wanted to do.
Yeah,
And
okay.
he did it with a bit of respect. I think a lot of people would say that, so there was no problem.
That's fair enough.
And
I'll just say,
he's
I'll
made a
warn you,
huge
you're being too
success of it.
nice.
I
You're
know,
being too
yeah.
nice.
He texted me before it saying, if you're not nice to me, I'll go at you. Like, so I'm trying to maybe temper it a small bit. I'm sure Jamie will soften me up a bit anyway over the next one.
We'll see. Any luck? Has he logged on there now? Ready to rock. He said he's ready to rock. So I think you just got to look to the left there and you can log him in.
Look to the left.
And then maybe I have to drop out, actually.
I'm going to remove you. Yeah. All right. So just as a recap, I suppose, before we get Jamie on the line. Hello, Jamie. How are things?
Is that working?
Hey,
Mick, how are you?
Not too bad now, not too bad. I was just saying, as a quick recap on maybe some of the selections that were made over the last while, and then you can maybe give us your opinion on the Tipperary one first, and then the Meath one afterwards. The Tipperary selection, Alan Quinlan was the main selector, and he chose Nicky English, Dennis Leamy, Shane Long, and Mick Canaan. Dahi Boland had inserted a passionate plea for John Doyle, and I myself had chose Nicky English, Owen Kelly, Declan Brown, and Mick Canaan, and we settled on a 4 of Nicky English, John Doyle, Declan Brown, and Mick Canaan. Managed to change 2 of them, which I was happy enough about, and I think the inclusion of John Doyle kept a lot of Tipperary hurling people happy. The Meath selection went a bit. Tommy Rooney picked Sean Boylan, Graham Geraghty, Mick Lyons, and Shane Horgan, and then Hector himself inserted Johnny Murtagh for Shane Horgan. I suppose we'll start with the Tipperary one yourself, and I know you've been gearing up to have a go here, so
ready to have a pop now. Yeah, first of all, the hair's looking good anyway. Which one of them put it at home? I see there's a lot of fans there looking for Kennedy, so I'll try not to disappoint Aldo and the lads there. But I suppose, like, first of all, with the Tipp one, I had it out with Kennedy about Canaan and that, and realistically he just put me in my box, and I don't know anything about racing, so I just said fair enough, I'll take that one and let that one go. And John Doyle, obviously with what he won and that, like, he's like the Christy Ring of Tipperary, so I think there was no fighting there. I suppose my big issue was, and you know, you're going to get it from me, is about that you did what all politicians do, and you looked after your base, as they say. And I knew you'd regret saying that to me earlier, but you looked after your base as a football man, and look, like, again, I suppose it's funny that you mentioned earlier about Deck winning 2 Fitzgibbons and a minor hurling All-Ireland, because I did actually look that up as well, because I was looking up about Declan Brown, but I suppose for me, I just thought it was criminal putting, and this, first of all, I don't want to be attacked by Mile Rovers people the next time I go up to Clonmel to Mchugh, but I thought it was criminal including Deck there ahead of a number of hurlers that you could have included. But also for me, I think Alan Quinlan probably should have made a stronger case for possibly, well, he was never going to make it for himself, but for Dennis Leamy, definitely. Like, and again, anyone who knows me knows I'm not going to be banging the rugby drum for too long, but just a quick look up of Dennis Leamy, like 2 Heineken Cups, 57 Ireland caps, and 145 Munster appearances. For me, the scale of sporting achievement there is just so high that it's kind of a bit, for me, it's not a runner to have Declan in ahead of him. And then the big one that I suppose you and me might have a falling out over is Shane Long's omission. So I'll let you have your say about my Shane Long thing before I try and defend him.
Yeah, I'll hold my hands up here, right? The Shane Long thing was a massive cop-out.
Yeah, fair enough.
Now, there was some part of it where I was like, I needed to cut down the list. And you could make a fairly strong case that some of the current Tipperary hurlers should be near that list. And I think in the next maybe 2 or 3 years, like, especially, like, Paddy Myers had as many All-Stars as anyone else in Tipperary. Or, like, you know, he's the same amount of All-Stars as Nicky English and O'Kelly. You know? Yeah. Jamie Callan won Hurler of the Year last year. We've had an amazing crew that came through and won 3 All-Ireland medals. And other than Declan Ryan and John Lahey, you have to go back a hell of a long time before you find someone else with 3 All-Ireland medals. So I suppose to maybe cut that down a small bit, I was like, I need to kind of keep it to people who are retired. Yeah. Happily, that meant that I was able to maybe take Shane Long out of it. Don't get me wrong, right? Soccer is the most popular sport in the world. Shane has been an unbelievable sports person, you know, played minor with Tipp for 3 years, has carved out a very good and unbelievable career in the Premier League in the current, you know, climate, which is very, very difficult to do. He's 82 Ireland caps. Like, I think he's a nailed on cert once he finishes, but he's not finished, and that's the crux of my argument.
He's not finished. He's 28, is it?
Well, like, yeah, I know.
I think he's more. Yeah. I think he's more than that now, but yeah. I understand where you're coming from with that. Like, and in fairness, like you've stolen a bit of my thunder there, because I was going to go on about how popular soccer is, and that was going to be one of my retards to you. But like, I suppose you can't. I think personally, like when you're talking about whether he's playing or not, like I don't think you can ignore 82 caps for Ireland, 17 international goals, 330 Premier League appearances, give or take, and 55 Premier League goals. Like the sheer volume of like the percentage that actually make it to that level of sport is so small. Like you heard Tommy talking about Meath the other day, and how, like, you know, Meath we've no international soccer player ever coming out of Meath yet. Like, I think straight away that puts you at, if you make it as that top tier soccer player, it just puts you on a different plane. But I suppose, like, you know, if we want to start Tommy bashing now and get it going in a while with the Meath thing, I think something that Tommy hasn't been clear about, and I think he should be clearer about, is the criteria. Like, you know, is this Mount Rushmore thing? I see Conor McCullough asking about what's a Mount Rushmore. Like, is a Mount Rushmore the scale of sporting achievement, or is it what matters most to the people? Like, you know, I think, but if we're going at scale of sporting achievement, I think leaving out a decorated senior international soccer player and Premier League footballer is criminal, like, you know. And that's before we even get near the hurling. I let Kennedy allude about hurling, because he can talk about that for a few hours, like. But, you know, I think before we even get near the hurling, I think leaving off the most decorated soccer player to ever come out of the county is crazy enough for me.
Yeah, and I completely get that. I think you could take two sides to it. Like Alan Quinlan only put one hurler in there, and I thought that was a bit criminal on its own, because of the county that Tipperary is, and that was the main thing that probably shone through to me when I tried to pick by four, was if you had 100 kids from Tipperary, right, at the age of 14 or 15, you know, maybe multi-sport athletes, and you pick them from different corners of the county, and I think you can maybe discard racing, because, you know, it's a smaller pool and it's very kind of specialised, but it is huge in Tipperary. But among the rest, if you gathered them up, you'd probably get over 50% who'd say that the hurling was their first sport.
At least, yeah.
You might
agree, Jim.
Yeah, you'll get maybe an equal enough divide, or somewhere near equal, between Gaelic football, soccer, and rugby, and then you'll have a selection of other sports. So that kind of told me, right, well, if I'm picking a Mount Rushmore, I have to have two hurlers in it, about 50%. Racing is huge in Tipperary. Yeah. That's why I'm definitely having racing, and the presence of Ballydoyle itself means that you have to have racing. And after that, you're left with one. Comes down to personal preference after that, I think. Like, and
I don't think, exactly, yeah.
Do you know? And in my life, and I like rugby, I like soccer. I think if I was picking my own Mount Rushmore, I'd probably have four, and I'd have four different sports in it. And I may not, I may not go with the way I actually did, which was trying to maybe put my Tipperary hat on. And trying to maybe, keep, like, I think Declan would be in both of mine, personally, because that's how much of an influence he had on me. So, but I completely take your point. Like, the scale of sport and achievement of Shane Long, and to another extent, any of our rugby players, Alan Quinlan himself and Dennis Leamy, on an international level, it's impossible to ignore. You know.
So are me and you so basically saying we're postponing our row and just we're passing the buck on to Tommy, that he hasn't been clear enough about all of this, really, like, and we're just saying this is Tommy's fault?
Yeah, I think so. Like,
I'm okay with that.
Like, this is one of those things where, like, you may not like the selections, but you just need to find someone to blame, and I'm happy enough to defer to him.
Yeah. Well, that sounds good to me. I'm okay with that too.
And look, I'm going to take you up on another thing that you've actually said as well. You were very heavy on getting rid of Mick Canaan, and like
with Kennedy at the start.
At the said, like he was the one you had the issue with, and then you kind of turned your attention to Declan Brown and trying to change that. But like the main one with you, and I see a tweet here, the omission of Shane Long and Owen Kelly bordered on ridiculous. You haven't really like talked to me about Owen Kelly. Like, do you think he gets in ahead of?
I was going to leave Owen Kelly for Seamus to talk about, but like I mean, very briefly, like Owen Kelly's stats for Tipperary are insane. I personally think if I was going to go picking a Mount Rushmore for Tipperary, and like having been dragged up by my father from Tipperary to games on the Quinlivan end during Kelly's kind of real, back when Kelly was carrying let's call it a spade, a bad Tipperary team, you know, and the 3 games against Limerick where Kelly was just a phenom. Like, I think the Kelly thing comes down to personal preference. Like, I know, and probably a bit of a generation thing. I know Alan spoke so highly of Nicky English, and I suppose for my generation and yours and Seamus, like we were probably a bit young for Nicky English. So like there's a bit of recency bias there as well. We're probably going to say, you know, oh, listen, it has to be Kelly for us, whereas for maybe people 10 years older than us, it's going to be Nicky. But like I personally just couldn't see a team without Owen Kelly. You know, even again, I'm talking scale of sporting achievement with Shane Long, but if the gun was put to my head on Kelly versus Shane Long, I'd be going for Kelly, just purely from a sense of what Kelly means to Tipperary people then as a whole, like as a county, you know.
Yeah, and I think you've probably hit the nail on the head. I suppose something we'll definitely talk to Seamus about in the next one is, you know, Owen Kelly was still there when he joined the Tipperary panel, and you know even what that was like to play with him and see him. Just the last thing I maybe want to touch on with you. We had the CPA survey was released today. The results of a survey of over 3,000 players, which was talking about a return to play this year, came out that 57% are prepared to return to play this year. 22% weren't prepared to return. 21% don't know at this stage, and 64% said they'd train or play if there was temperature checking done. I know you're involved with your local club in Kilbrittain on the management side, and it'd be good to maybe just get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, so I suppose like you said, Mikey, like those stats are there now, and at least I suppose it's something that I was very interested to hear. That a lot of people are talking about, you know, we should leave it to the experts. And I agree, we should leave the decisions in that of what we can and can't do to the experts. But I think something that shouldn't be forgotten is, you know, this is very much a voluntary organization. Like, you know, playing is very voluntary, and like these guys have to go home to, we don't know, you know, so who has to go home to their mother or father who might be a vulnerable person, or to a grandparent who might be living with the family. You know, personally, I think 22% who said they're categorically not prepared to return to play is a huge number. That's 3 on every starting 15. That's a massive amount, and that's just the club players, you know. Over 27% of club players said that they live with a person who's over 70 or would be considered a vulnerable person. You know, I think John Horan spoke very, very well the other night when he said, you know, GA players have to go to work. You know, you have to go to work back at KPMG. I hope I got it right now, so your employers aren't.
PwC, yeah.
PwC, yeah, definitely. I knew I was going to get it wrong.
That was a nice plug.
Nice plug. See, I got everyone in there. But no, like, you know, you still have to go into an office after playing.
Yeah.
You know, and like, I think it's all well and good to say, oh, is Mikey willing to play? Yes, Mikey's willing to play. But is John and Mary, are they willing to work with Mikey after he goes out and plays? And these are all things that I think, I'm not saying I have the answers to them. You know, you said that might be a red rag to a bull to me, but I'm not saying I have the answers to these things. But I am saying we have to take a little bit longer to figure them out. And I think, you know, I'll just give you one quick example before I go, because I know the lads are itching to get Kennedy on. The Bundesliga is coming back next week. In our house here, we're so deprived of sport. We set up a little sweepstake. I'm going to be a Leipzig fan. The brother is supporting Dortmund. You know, we've Wolfsburg, we've all that, right? And at the end of the day, that's going to be great. We can't wait to see it. But I don't know Timo Werner. I don't know Thomas Muller. I don't really care about these guys on a personal level. I don't care what their home situation is. And I'm quite happy to let them dance for my entertainment and for my amusement. It's a very, very different thing, us talking like that about sending inter-county or club players back to play behind closed doors for our entertainment. We have to remember these are guys that live and work in the community. They're not sheltered millionaires. We can't send them off to an isolation camp like the Hunger Games. These are things we can't do at our level. So we think we have to be very careful about comparing the GAA to any other sport, because it is so different. And I think it's just something that, as a society as a whole, I think we have to be a little bit more cognizant of when it comes to this whole discussion around the return to play.
Yeah, it's, as you said, I don't think there's any right answer, but I also don't think, I think there is a certain proportion out there that believe that, you know, maybe we might have to wait for a vaccine, but like that could be a long way off.
Yeah. No, and I agree with you on that. I'm not in that camp of we need to wait for a vaccine indefinitely. Like, I think at some point, unfortunately, we will have to just, you know, we will have to kind of maybe change our tack in that, even if there is no vaccine. But what I do hope people do is that we're willing to be patient and wait for, at the very least, science to catch up. You know, my sister's doing research science in Cambridge. You know, we owe it to people and to science to give them 6 months, give them 12 months. Look, I love sports as much as the next person, but we have to go without for a year. That's not a huge sacrifice in the grand scheme of things. You know, we'll be fine. We can sit here and talk rubbish about made up mountains and made up teams of decades and stuff. We'll get by, you know. I think we just owe people a small bit of time and a bit of patience to figure it out, you know.
Yeah. No, I think you're spot on there. Thanks very much for coming on. You were a bit softer. You were a bit softer on me than I thought you'd be, but I think it's the first. Yeah, we're getting there.
Diplomacy lessons. Go on.
That's it. Right. Thanks very much, Jamie.
Good luck. See you.
Bye. Joining us now, hopefully on the line, is Tipperary's Seamus Kennedy. Again, just a quick sum up and welcome to Mount Rushmore Aftersun for anybody who's just joined us. The Tipperary selection consisted of John Doyle, Nicky English, Declan Brown and Mick Canaan. And joining us from the Nair County Waterford is Seamus Kennedy for an impartial North Tipperary view. Seamus, I think Jamie has kind of deferred a lot of the hurling talk to yourself. And I myself, after the selection, got a text message off you saying you had one job. Where's Owen Kelly? Yeah, and that's probably the first place to start, I think.
Yeah, I think so. And especially, I suppose you spoke about it being a generational thing there, and just Owen Kelly, 2 All-Ireland, 6 All-Stars. He scored 21, 369 in his championship hurling career for Tipp. He captained Tipp to an All-Ireland, and being biased, he's the first South Tipp man to captain Tipp to an All-Ireland, you know. So I think just for me, Owen Kelly has to be there. Brought himself and John Lahey brought Mullinholme to their first ever county senior hurling title in 2002 as well. He hurled for Kieran's. I think he won an All-Ireland colleges. He won a Fitzgibbon Cup in LIT as well. I know, obviously not for Tipp, but like Owen Kelly, for me, is probably the greatest hurler Tipperary has produced. And you're saying Tipperary is a hurling county, so for me, it's just an absolutely no-brainer. I think I can understand the Nicky won Tipp, won an All-Ireland in 71 and didn't win an All-Ireland again until 89, and Nicky was the poster boy for that time and the best they produced. So for a lot of people, Nicky, you know, as they said, was God. And then how do you leave out John Doyle, who was 8 All-Ireland medals? So you probably have to pick 2 out of that. For me, 2 out of that 3. But for me, Owen Kelly is first on Mount Rushmore, the Tipperary Mount Rushmore.
What was it like to play with him? Or what was it like to even see him every day in training or every second day when you first went into the panel? Yeah,
I suppose I was lucky enough at the end of 2013, got to go in and do a bit of training with him at the start of 2014, and it was unbelievable. I suppose you looked up and I went to games in Clonmel and Fethard and Munro and all these places just literally to watch Owen Kelly, Paul Kern, John Lahey all play in your local club ground. So to actually be maybe marking him for 5 minutes in a training match or be doing a drill with him was unbelievable. And I think I'm even more biased again that I've been lucky enough to get to know Owen, been involved with the Tipp panel the last couple of years, and he's an unbelievable guy as well, you know. And so he's just top class, and he's only a phone call or text away if you're struggling with something or for a bit of advice, and he's very good to give you that little chat there even before training, after training, let you know you're going and things like that. So yeah, I'm very biased, but I think I still think he absolutely has to be on the Mount Rushmore.
Yeah, to be honest, look, when I went to try and select it, Quinny didn't give me much to work with, to be honest. I managed to get 2 of them out, but I couldn't get Owen Kelly in there, and I think I would have been crucified in Tipperary if John Doyle wasn't on it, I think.
Yeah, fair enough.
From people who know hurling, I personally, like, I'm from Clonmel, I don't know that much about it. Like, you're, you know, like, let's say, right, you went to school in Thurles, okay? Like, were Jimmy and John Doyle talked about much between lads up there, or was it well past that generation? Was it the current generation that were only talked about in the school, or what way was it done?
It would have been the current generation, like, you know, at the time you'd had, I suppose, Pádraig Maher. I was up there around 2009 and 10, like, and 11. So at that time, Pádraig Maher and Mickey Call and those lads weren't long out of the school. So it was actually more about those guys. Tipp had a few poor years before those lads had come along. Like, so got to the All-Ireland final in 2009 and then obviously won it in 10. So they were the new superstars, really. Like, and so none of those older guys, none of the Doyles or anything like that would have been spoken about. Like, and obviously there's not very little footage of their games and things like that as well. So and the game has changed so much too. So it's hard to really compare. I think Dennis Leamy's very, very unlucky, to be honest with you. I know you spoke about it there as well. He's a Grand Slam and 2 Heineken Cups and was, you know, arguably the best player in the world in his position, or one of them, for a couple of years, you know.
Yeah, like, look, I don't think there's a right answer when you're trying to pick one spot between rugby, soccer and football in Tipperary. Like, I can completely understand you'll have pockets of each who will fight the corner for whichever one, and I happen to be in the football corner. But I do think that, like, I don't think you disagree with the Mick Kinane shout. I know Jamie probably referenced it there. He said that originally he was trying to have a go at that, and you put him in your place.
Nah, like, I think Mick Kinane, you look at the races he won when he was lead jockey for Ballydoyle, was crazy, but then he probably got to ride See the Stars as well, and, like, probably a horse of a lifetime. And I think the ride he gave him in the Ark alone is nearly worth him getting on the Mount Rushmore. But for the
commentary alone.
Yeah, the commentary alone. But, like, Ballydoyle and Coolmore is the greatest horse and organisation in the world, like, worldwide. And, you know, we have them in Tipp here, like, so for me they have to be represented. I know, like, Aidan O'Brien's not from Tipp or John Magner's not from Tipp, but it's still such a huge part of this county. It has to be represented, I think.
Yeah.
Also, as someone said there, Franny Kelly was better than Declan Brown, so that could be debated too. Like,
that's a Clonmel Commercials bias coming out in your shares.
Absolutely.
You worked in Coolmore yourself.
I was in Ballydoyle, yeah.
Oh, sorry. I'd like to get your opinion on the fact that Aidan O'Brien didn't make the Wexford Mount Rushmore, which I think is the greatest snub out of any of them so far.
Yeah, but does he fall into was he one of your cop-outs that he's still playing or training that he can't be at it?
He's not, but he's born in Wexford, like. He's born in Wexford,
the fact that he's still training, like, does he have to retire before he can get into it, like, the Shane Long cop-out?
Oh. Yeah, no, I'll take that, so. No, that's fine. Well, maybe it's the fact that, well, I don't think you can argue with the Cork Mount Rushmore, but maybe Vincent O'Brien deserved a bit more of a shout. The fact that
the Cork one was tough, to be fair.
Yeah. Would you change anything? What would your 4 be?
My 4 would be Owen Kelly, Mick Kinane, Shane Long, and probably Nicky English, just from hearing the stories on Nicky English. Now, I know you're leaving out John Doyle, who won 8 All-Irelands and 10 Munster and 10 National Leagues, but for me, I suppose it's just so long ago that, and as I said, there's no footage or anything like that, whereas there was footage of Nicky, and you know, Nicky was God here, like, that was his nickname and things like that, and hearing stories from Dad and watching the old videos and DVDs and things like that, Nicky probably would get in my one. Like, I'd probably toss a coin between Nicky and John Doyle just because of the legends that John Doyle has spoken of, but other than that, Shane Long, Mick Kinane and Owen Kelly are nailed onto mine.
And I suppose a lot of the people commenting underneath here are really looking to find out the main question, which is it big ball or small ball for Seamus Kennedy? The Honourable Award winner from 2019 this year, which is for the best Gaelic footballer in the county last year. The winter footballer, as he's known.
Yeah, the soft ground suits me. Yeah, a lot of smart lads down in the comments there. But shout out to Aldo there, like, who's on the front line there in Edinburgh. So fair play to him. Not an easy place to be at the minute, and top man Aldo there. So thank you, Aldo.
No, Seamus, thanks very much for joining us. I think you can't argue with some of your selections. I don't think there's a right answer to it, but I'm sure this will be taken up again in the future. So I think we're going to say goodbye to Seamus now.
Yeah, we'll see you for a game of golf next week.
See you later.
Good luck.
And to continue on, we're going to try and get Mickey Burke on the line here. Just again to recap, I suppose we've talked a lot about Tipperary in the last while. The Meath selections. The Meath selections were, in the end, Sean Boylan, Mick Lyons, Graham Geraghty and Johnny Murtagh. Some massive snubs out there, Mickey. Some massive snubs. Apparently yourself, how are things? Apparently you were blindsided by the fact that you heard Geraghty and presumed it was Barry Geraghty and left it at that. Would you have changed anything in your plea? Would you have gone hard for Trevor Giles if you had your time back, or what would you have done?
Look, I would say, to be honest, Mick, like that the county, it'll be an even split between the two guys, you know what I mean, if there was a vote put to it. You know, there'd be two different camps. Graham was like the rogue, Trevor was like the golden boy. Yeah, I thought it was Barry, because obviously horse racing is massive in Meath. Now I was pushing for Johnny Murtagh, but then I got the message wrong. But Graham, you know, you probably know yourself from playing from a couple of guys. You couldn't compare yourself to Graham. He was something different, something special, fitness-wise, everything. He was a freak in the best possible way of putting it. You know, while Trevor was just maybe pure football, but there's an argument for both. You know, there really is an argument for both.
And that's what I was going to ask you. A lot of people have billed this kind of as it's either Geraghty or Giles, but should it not be Geraghty and Giles?
Possibly so. Like Sean romped away. Sean was like not even in for consideration. He's the only free man in Meath. Obviously did everything he did with his, you know, herbal remedies, with football. Mick Lyons has kind of got in. Mick, another legend. He lifted the All-Ireland in '87 after 20 years. Natural hard man. He's only from 10 miles down the road from us. He's a rock, a legend. He's kind of just not being discussed that much. Is really focusing in on Graham, but there is a you know, the two boys could definitely have got in there. Like Graham had such a long career, lifted the All-Ireland in '99 himself. Trevor had 2 footballers of the year. It's really just your own preference. Like so many great things about Graham as well. You know, Alex Ferguson mentioned him when he was up at a league game in Croke Park. Paul Merson in the book saying he was one of the fittest guys he ever went when he went over for a trial with Arsenal. It's just really your own. And I was lucky to play with the two boys, so I'm going to sit in the fence, Mick, to be honest with
you. You're not throwing Mick Lyons under the bus.
No, I wouldn't. No, I wouldn't, because he's such, you know, I wasn't lucky enough to see maybe enough of Mick. I think that's important to say, as you were discussing earlier on there with John Doyle in your own county. Like, the first two guys I would have thought of in Tipperary were Declan Brown and John Doyle. They were the first two boys that came into my head in your county automatically before I heard the 4 guys that you picked. So I think it's not important to disregard the guys of previous generations just because we haven't seen them. I would think that if you were a young fella in Meath growing up in the 70s and the 80s and the early 90s, Mick Lyons was your man. So you have to take all that into account. It's so tough, like, to pick any of them.
And like, do you agree with the weighting that was given to Gaelic football and to horse racing? I know, like, look, you've played hurling as well. Is it a thing that there had to be 3 Gaelic football representatives on it and 1 horse racing? Should it have been different? Should there have been a different sport in there, or do you think the balance was right?
It's very hard to argue with them, but like, as we said, you know, Shane Horgan, I was pushing for Devin Toner as well, a bit like Shane Long, kind of, in a way. Look, maybe Devin, as I was saying on my video, doesn't have maybe the love or for the purist that Shane has, maybe we'll say, but his caps speak for themselves. Like, he has over 70 caps for Ireland. He's probably going to break the record with Leinster caps. I know, as I was saying, Shane played with the Lyons. It's so hard to call, but I was making it. I don't think you could have left Devin out of the chat. You know, you've Martin O'Connell there as well, the only Meath man on the team of the Millennium, football team of the Millennium. And I think Johnny deserves it, because he's probably the greatest flat jockey of all time. He's up there with Mick Canaan. The two boys used to compete against each other. So, yeah, it's
like, so I suppose just some of the national hunt jockeys and trainers which have maybe been overlooked, like you've Paul Carberry, Nina Carberry, Barry Geraghty, Gordon Elliott, Noel Meade. Like, that's an array of Irish national hunt talent, which is, like, does it compare to maybe the football? I mean, they're probably some of the best jockeys and trainers in the world at the moment and in the past.
Absolutely, and sure, Meath is flatland, like, so it's huge, it's huge horsey country up here, and Kildare beside us as well. I would always probably be siding with the football, but you can't ignore them records either from all them trainers and jockeys. The Graham and the Trevor one will just that'll go on forever.
Does that relate? Does it kind of tell you what sort of a Meath person you are? What can you fall into there?
Maybe so. The boys had great, the boys had such good traits, all of them. They had that real kind of natural Meath hardness, I suppose, that was appreciated from the teams of the 80s and the early 90s. And them boys came along, and Graham had the kind of the fancy boots and the flashy hair, but he had that hard substance as well. Where Trevor was, he was that beautiful playmaker, and it was just really completely up to yourself who you'd pick. Like, as I said, I was lucky to be in the dressing room with the two boys. Graham, played until he was 39. Like, in 2012, just a quick one on Graham from training with him. He ruptured his Achilles in the early part of 2012. He was still in the squad at 39. We got to the Leinster final. He came back training in the summer. You'd be doing sprints and training in the summer. We did about 10 or 12 sprints in Parthalton. He came back on his first night, and he won about 6 of them. Like, he just had no fitness done. He was only coming back from ruptured Achilles. He was 39. He's just one of them boys you couldn't you can't compare yourself to. He's different gravy, He's one in a million. But I won't disagree with any of the our Mount Rushmores. But Trevor, I'm going to sit in the fence, like I'm saying. I know the two boys, Mick, so I better sit in the fence.
I suppose, just to maybe finish up, you had a nice story that went up on your Instagram page there during the week or last week. A picture of your dad, Stoney Burke, who played minor and senior for Meath in the one day.
Doing a bit of a clean up here at home, all right. Skipping out a bit of stuff in the sheds. So I came across that picture, yeah. I would have seen Paddy McBrearty and Benny Coulter and a few different lads did it in their day. There's probably a few more. So it happened to my father. Yeah, he played in goals in 1959. He was the minor goalie. And the senior goalie got sick or injured, I believe. And yeah, he stood in the goals and played then for a couple of years later. But it's an amazing record. Probably never going to be done again with the change of ages, Mick. So
yeah, I don't think so. I think it's really remarkable, because people look at goalkeepers and you very rarely see very young keepers being thrown into the mix like that. It's a very, very cool story.
Well, they say that there's a bit of madness in every goalie, don't they? So it's probably where I got it from.
That's it. Thanks very much for joining us, Mick.
Mick, thanks a million. Same to you.
I'm glad that you've sat on the fence. It'll leave it to me to give Tommy some grief over this. I think he's going to rejoin us on the line, but keep safe and we'll chat to you again soon.
Same to you, lad. Take a handy. Thanks.
I suppose to maybe wrap up things, we'll hopefully get Tommy Rooney back on the line. Boys have been exceptionally soft on us, I think. It might have helped that there was some some commentary offline between us. But
Well,
Mickey Burke has backed you up, Tommy Rooney. He's
yeah,
backed you up. He's sat on the fence.
I know. I suppose, Michael, I didn't factor in the fact that he played at them, that maybe he was going to sit in the fence and he was going to further the debate that, like, it's very hard to choose between Giles and Gardaí. I'll tell you one thing, though. I put up a poll on the Twitter account, and as we all know by polls, it's hard to know with them, as we mentioned with the CPA survey earlier on. Like, you know, it's hard to get a full opinion from polls. So I'm not saying I agree with this poll, but I put up a poll. There's only 150 votes. It's open till 8:30 tomorrow morning. Help us out. Giles or Gardaí, who would you have chosen for Meath's Mount Rushmore? What do you think the vote is at? I'll tell you what.
I'd say it's very, very tight. I'd say it's 45-55.
I'd love to tell you it was that tight. It's Trevor Giles 62.3%, Graham Gardaí 37.7%. So Giles hasn't got a majority yet to get in. He hasn't reached the quota yet, but he's moving that direction. Look, I'll be honest, man. I said it earlier on. I really feel like, in ways, there's minutes that go by that I feel like I let myself down. Like, why didn't I appreciate Trevor Giles? Why didn't he make me feel the same way Graham Gardaí made me feel as a Meath lad growing up? I don't know, like, and I'm kind of changing my mind all the time. And if we had gone on air for another 5 minutes the other morning, Hector probably would have turned me. I probably might have bailed on him. I don't know. It's hard to turn your back on Graham Gardaí, though. What he did for the county.
Yeah, I'm going to put the same thing that I put to Mickey. Maybe, like, people have built billing this as Giles against Gardaí. Is it not Giles with Gardaí?
No, and I'll tell you why, right? Because, okay, Sean Boylan was on it without a doubt. And
yeah, and I don't think anyone disagrees there.
Without a doubt, right? But Sean Boylan, like, I tried to get at it in the heart of the piece. There's two sides to Sean Boylan. He's one of the most incredible people I've ever come across working on this show. I'm always privileged and blessed to work on this show, in the fact that I get to call people who work in sport and who are at the top of their game, and I get to chat to them and get them on the show. And I'll tell you what, I always make an excuse to try and get Sean Boylan on once a year. I swear. And he'll always answer the phone and he'll have a chat, and he'll hear me out. He'll listen to the idea and he'll say, do you know what? I'll come on. And when we have him on, it's always magic. He tells stories. He's a storyteller, and he's one of the nicest men I've come across working at this. And people across the country, when I said I was writing that piece on Twitter the other night, I got DMs off a county footballer in Down. I had a Kerry legend texting me saying, can't wait to read your piece. And I was like, Jesus, I'm under pressure here to nail this Sean Boylan piece. I stayed up till 3 a.m. trying to write it. So, like, people care about Sean Boylan an awful lot. But there's two sides to Sean Boylan. Sean Boylan created these sides that were unbelievably good at football, but they were also, there was a hardiness to them, and there was an edge to them. Do you know? And, like, yeah. And I feel like on that Mount Rushmore beside him, I felt like I needed to have, I couldn't give the context of Jack Quinn. I couldn't. I can't give that context. I couldn't have, if somebody had come on and said Jack Quinn has to be on it, and Hector made a good shout, if someone else had pushed it, I might have thought about Jack Quinn, but I just can't give that context, and I'd be bluffing if I tried to. So what I tried to do was represent the two sides of Sean Boylan. There's Mick Lyons, who was everything when it comes to setting the tone and winning that first All-Ireland. And, like, when you talk about a hard man, Mick Lyons was the hard man. Like, I hit his nephew Kevin Lyons' shoulder in a warm up for a match when we were about 16 or 17. We nailed each other going for a ball, and I swear to God we were concussed for the next 20 minutes of the match. We hadn't a clue what was going on. And, like, they're the hardiest of people you can come across. And then you have Graham Gardaí, and I think it represents who I am as a person. I'm an outsider when it comes to Meath. I'm on the edge of the county. I went to school in Monaghan. Everyone slags me in Meath Hill for my accent, saying I haven't got a Meath accent. They all say I have a Dublin accent, which is ridiculous from listening to me. And then the lads in Dublin all say I have a Meath accent. So I have always felt like an outsider. And that's why I went for Graham Gardaí.
Actually, both of you have said this. One of the first things that comes out whenever you talk about Meath football, and yourself and Mickey have both said it, is there an obsession with this hard man thing? Like, where the football is one thing, but, you know, looking out for yourself and being able to look after yourself is another. And that's why maybe Trevor Giles gets overlooked, because he was just eloquent in what he did, never looked like he was under pressure, just knew what to do with the ball and made it look so easy that he doesn't get the praise he deserves. He won 2 Footballers of the Year. He's the only ever player to do it. That alone gets him into it.
Well, it doesn't, as you know well know, it doesn't
It
alone get you
doesn't,
into a
yeah.
Mount Rushmore. As you and Jamie were saying,
Yeah.
the criteria is probably too loose, but that is what Mount Rushmore is. It's if you can make your case and you can fight it, you can stand over it. And if you can't stand over it, you've got to deal with the consequences. So you're probably hitting on two things there. You're probably right with the hardiness element, because like over the last 15 years, Meath went from like they had obviously All Irelands before Sean Boylan, but before Sean Boylan came in, nothing really happened for 15, 16 years. And it's been 15 years now since Sean Boylan has left. And yes, there was 2 All Ireland semi-finals, and there was that Leinster title in 2010, and there's been Leinster finals, but it hasn't, and Division 1 last year, and they're getting better, but it's not what Meath people are used to. And I grew up knowing, having such pride. I could go to school in Monaghan and be surrounded by all these Monaghan people and be able to stand my corner and say, I'm a Meath man, I don't care. Like, we've won All Irelands. Where's your All Ireland, Monaghan? Like, where's your All Ireland? They're still waiting on it. Now, they did beat us in that league final. And I had a good crack with Mark Ward, the Meath footballer, about it on Twitter a couple of weeks ago. He obviously dropped the ball into the back of the net as Paul Finley's shot came in. I was sitting with a load of Monaghan lads at the time. That's tough, Mick. It's tough. Yeah. You're okay. You're from Clonmel. You're a Tipp man. You know, the only grief you're going to get is not being good at hurling.
Yeah, well, like we're down on our own, and I suppose there'll be people from Tipperary would come on and say like that we're quite different to the rest of the county. I would say in a lot of senses. You know, we haven't had that many hurlers, bar Seamus, Donal Fahy, and Theo English. I don't know have we had anyone else who's won an All Ireland with Tipp for the amount of All Irelands that have been won. Maybe a long time ago, you know. So I get that aspect of it.
It's hard for that not to have an influence on.
Yeah, it is. It is.
We're not robots. Like, I'm not expecting you to be a robot when I pick you. I knew you were going to have some sort of an inkling or leaning towards Declan Brown. I didn't know whether he was going to end up there. But that's important too.
Yeah, but it kills me that I didn't put Shane Long in it, because from a personal point of view, soccer was a huge part of my life. You know, and if it was my Mount Rushmore, there may not be 2 hurlers on it, you know, but I think it's not my Mount Rushmore, it's Tipperary's.
True.
And I think you need to maybe detach yourself from that a small bit. I believe the debate will go on. I think the Giles versus Geraghty, there will never be a right answer. I think anybody from outside the county will go 2 footballers of the year. It's not a contest.
Yes, but can I make one more point? And Trevor Giles is the darling of Meath football. He is not overlooked. Trevor Giles is adored across the county. He's absolutely adored. And part of me felt like it was the easy choice going for Trevor Giles. I could have gone for Trevor Giles and Martin O'Connell, and nobody would have blinked. They wouldn't have blinked.
Yeah, true.
Can I ask you one more question? Well, if Declan Brown hadn't been Declan Brown, how would your GA career have gone? Like, did he mean much to you boys? Like, you were 2011, you won a minor All Ireland. Coleman Kennedy rattles the back of the net and you beat Dublin, like an iconic Dublin team. And a lot of you Tipp boys have gone on and you went on a run to the All Ireland semi-final, and a lot of the boys are playing hurling, or Colin O'Riordan's playing in Australia now. Like, without Declan Brown, I think he created a legacy in Tipp, or he led a legacy.
Yeah, certainly. I think around the time of the 2002, when they drew the Munster final with Cork, and you know, he was a superstar that year, and a lot of people who may not have you know, seen that much football definitely would have seen that year. It became a much more attractive proposition after that. But the reason, you know, people will look and say that I put him in, but like, Declan reached the top of what you can do in Gaelic football in this country. Maybe without the tools that you would have, you know, and that was a very good Tipperary team. I think that gets overlooked as well. You know, they probably should have bet Cork in that 2002 Munster final. You know, they were really, really close, and that does get overlooked, and because he was who he was. But he definitely, look, he's a huge part of it. I hated him because he played with my Rovers, you know, and I'm glad in one way that he retired the year after I started. I only ever came across him once in a match, which was, you know, that was plenty. But yeah, like, look, I think for any of, I don't think the Munster under 21 in 2010. I maybe don't think the 2011 minor team. I don't think any of those teams happen without there being a small bit of a Gaelic football lit, which was probably what happened in 2002.
Yeah. I think those things matter. And I think it matters when you're asking yourself this question as well.
Yeah, it does. And like, look, it's hard. It's really, really hard. And I can completely understand why people would be very disappointed by the fact that Shane Long isn't in it. But I had to put my criteria on it. You left it far too vague, and
listen, we need content. We need something to talk about and off the ball for the next 6 months. So listen, you can't be blaming me for that. Before we go, I'll just say that Down is coming up again on Friday morning on OTB AM. We've Conor Deegan on, and we've Donal O'Neill. And one of my favourite things about doing this slot is that when I ring people to ask them to come on, you were a tough job to convince. There's some people that are tough to convince. They don't want there's sometimes there's a lot of pressure on it. Like Conor Deegan, after I said it to him, he took his time and he said, Tommy, I'm looking out my back window and I'm looking at the Mourns. And I would love to build a Mount Rushmore for Down. And we'd put it right up there. But he's texted me since that he's been having serious trouble trying to figure out a 4. Think of it, Rory McIlroy.
Yeah, has to go in it.
Like, when you talk about Belfast, which side is on Antrim and which side is in Down? When you talk about Newry, which side is in Armagh and which side is in Down? There's a big split across that county. You've got Pat Jennings. You've got, who else have you got in Down? You've got Mickey Linden. You've got Sean O'Neill on the team of the Millennium. There's an incredible array of talent. There's Ciara McGean, an Olympian who's done phenomenal stuff in her field. It's like, it's very difficult. Every county you go to, we're getting all these amazing stories. And that's my favourite thing about it, is the stories we're getting off the back of it, not the abuse.
No, and I'm glad that our chance in the light of trying to defend ourselves is now come and gone. Yeah. Thanks very much, Tom, and we're going to wrap it up there, I think, are we?
Yeah, perfect. Fair play, Michael. Good stuff, man. The heat is still on.
The heat is still on.